The Baroque style of the theatrical and the emotional is seen in the paintings of Caravaggio, where we saw the sculptures of Bernini exemplify Baroque style. Caravaggio is the painter that the Catholic Church has waited for, and to be honest, he's one of my favorite painters of all time. And I want us to kind of set the stage so that we can understand how these particular paintings are meant to be seen. He paints for the church, and a lot of that means it's in the church, in a chapel, and you can only see it really by being in the space because he painted them to be on these walls. It's kind of fun because if you are standing here, this chapel is actually very, very dark, so they've installed special lights just to see his paintings, and then you have to put a couple euro in just so the lights will come back on. One way, I guess, to make some money off of tourists. This is the Contarelli Chapel. This is located in San Luigi, just a few blocks from the Pantheon in Rome. Contarelli was a French cardinal, and this is the very front of the church on the left if you're walking down the nave facing the front. This is all about Matthew. We have directly in front of us the inspiration for Matthew to write his gospel. So we have the calling of Matthew on the left, where Christ comes in and calls Matthew, a tax collector, out of his life of sin and calls him to be one of his disciples. And then on the right-hand side of this chapel, we have the martyrdom of Matthew, where in Baroque style, it is almost like a stage, a theater that is set up, and we see a self-portrait of Caravaggio in here as well. I want to spend time looking at the inspiration of St. Matthew. Caravaggio painted an earlier one on the left that was destroyed in World War II because it was in Berlin. And this is depicting the writing of Matthew. But the Catholic Church did not like it and they made him repaint it. Two of the things that they didn't like is that Caravaggio liked to portray the sinner rather than the saint in these church paintings. So he liked to show the bare feet so that pilgrims who were looking at this, if you're standing in this chapel, your eye level is going to be at the base of these paintings where you would see their feet. So he wanted to draw in the pilgrims who were coming from all over. The other thing that the church did not like is that the angel is actually moving Matthew's hand to write the gospel, which would help us understand the Bible, that it is inspired by God. He used man, but it was written really by divine intervention. So Caravaggio paints a new one, and we have the new one on the right. And I want to talk about the composition because it is so radical. So you might ask yourself, is it balanced? It's very different than the one on the left. It's not as crowded, but there's an S-shape balance to this. It does feel a little off, but when we walk through it, when our eye flows through it, we are drawn in either at the top by the white of the angel's drapery or by the feet at the bottom of Matthew. And then we follow, our eye goes along his leg and up his robe to his eyes, and then the eyes, where they're gazing at each other, our eye goes back and forth and kind of bounces between. Notice the angel is ticking things off with his hand. Still guiding Matthew as he's writing the gospel. So to be honest, this really demonstrates Caravaggio's rebel-like behavior in that he still paints the same thing, just in a slightly different way, because notice Matthew is still barefoot. Caravaggio is a master of light and shadow, and this painting's too beautiful to not talk about it. This is called the Entombment, and again, it is commissioned by the church and is housed in the church in Rome. The entombment is where Christ's body is already down from the cross and they are taking him to the tomb. And so we see Caravaggio, one of the foundations of this painting is this huge stone slab. And it's symbolically a metaphor for Christ as the chief cornerstone. This composition is really solid, and our eye kind of goes back and forth, and maybe we don't really understand why. So let's pull apart some of the things that we can notice about this particular piece. Pay attention to Caravaggio's use of hands and feet. They are all over this piece. We see Nicodemus as the main figure here holding up Christ's lower half, his legs. And then we see John the Evangelist who's supporting the torso of Christ. And look at how Caravaggio has John's hand wrapped underneath Christ's ribs here, and his fingers go into the wound on his side. Caravaggio is a master at this tactile quality. This is something, this is before TV, so this would have been powerful and moving for a viewer to stand on the other side. It still is today, but it is so about the tactile quality, the texture. We have the light and the dark, and there's one main light source, and everything drops off into shadow. The background is completely blank. Okay, back to our characters here, our figures. The other person behind, John is really in the shadows, but the other person in the middle here is Mary, the Madonna, and she is being portrayed as a nun. She has a habit. She is older. We have seen a very young Mary, even with Michelangelo's Pietà, where he depicts them at the same age. Do you see that hand above Christ's head? That is her hand hovering there above his head, and that's where our eye really kind of repeats with those hands. And then we have Mary Magdalene in the back with her hands thrown up and her eyes going to heaven. So this really helps our eye move throughout the entire composition. And notice then the final thing is that Christ's arm is hanging down and touching the stone, as well as his white robe that draws us back down to the bottom. Speaking of emotional impact, this is one of Caravaggio's followers. She is depicting his style almost exactly, and if I might say, taking it to a whole new level. This is Artemisia Ghentileschi, and she is painting Judith slaying Holofernes. And this is a story from the book of Judith that was not put in the Bible, but is a story about the Assyrian general Holofernes, and then Judith, who was a Jewish widow. And she knows that the Jewish army is in trouble by the invading general, who is the king of Assyria, is Nebuchadnezzar. So she lures Holofernes into her tent and possibly seduces him. And while he is sleeping, her and her maidservant come in and she decapitates him. So this is a victory for the Jews. And what is astounding is that Ghentileschi is portraying this in such astonishing detail. She has the one light source, so we have certain details bathed in light and then other details in total shadow. So you understand and you feel the drama of this particular moment. You see the texture on the bed sheets, the velvet of the red blanket that's on the bed, and then the yellow of her gown. She is not squeamish in any way. We see the scene as believable with the sword and the blood spewing. She painted these as a series, and this is her and her maidservant with Holofernes' head in a basket as they go away. Now, Caravaggio painted the scene. This was a popular scene to paint, and many artists paint it, but none better, in my opinion, than Ghentileschi. Caravaggio's depiction, it's great. However, is it really believable? Can we believe that this Judith, this waif with the expression on her face, is really slaying Holofernes? I'm not sure. You be the judge.